Good afternoon, everybody. I will call the meeting to order. I'll ask for a mover for the approval of the agenda. Moved by Mr. Ustroff and seconded by Councillor Osanek. All those in favor? Before we approve the agenda, we're going to make a slight change. We're going to add a briefing to the portion. Was that for the public engagement? Yeah, we're going to add a briefing for the public engagement, and that briefing's not going to take place in the order that you see in the agenda. It's actually going to take place as it arises in the business. So we'll go through the agenda, and as the public engagement arises in the business on the agenda, we'll be doing the briefing at that time. Having said that, all those in favor of the agenda? That passes. Can I get a mover for the confirmation of the minutes? Councillor Schell, seconded by Councillor Osanek. All those in favor? Do we have any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have agreed to move the delegation further back into the meeting. We don't have any briefings. Moving on to business item A, tax write-offs pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001. Can I get an introduction from staff? Mrs. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the routine tax write-off report that's in front of you. There's a few properties that are listed out in section in the appendix to the report with respect to section 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act for the write-offs, and we do have provisions within the budget to cover off these particular amounts.
Thank you. Do I have any questions from the committee? Seeing none, do we have any questions or comments from the public? Do I have a mover to accept business item A? Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor Schell. All those in favor? That passes. Moving on to business item B, delegation of power to assess review board under section 357 of the Municipal Act 2001. Can I get an introduction from staff? Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report is before the committee with respect to, so we have the ability to delegate authority under section 357 of the Municipal Act to the ARB with respect to write-offs of taxes. There are 8 different categories within section 357, 7 of which are on the previous report, and tend to be more administrative in nature and involve the Municipal Property Assessment Corp with respect to assessment values and classes. The 8th one tends to be a little more complex and lengthy, and that's with respect to sickness or extreme poverty. Most municipalities have delegated this authority to review these to the ARB for a couple reasons. One, it does involve personal information, so it provides a forum that's a little less public in terms of review, and probably more importantly, provides some consistency across the province with respect to decisions made in this regard. So we're recommending that this be delegated to the ARB, and I should say we haven't, in the last number of years, certainly since I've been here, we've had no applications under this section, but just a bit of a cleanup here to make sure that we've got it appropriate.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Seeing none, do we have any questions from the public? Do I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor Schell. Do we have any further comments? Seeing none, we'll call to vote. All those in favor? And that passes. Moving on to business item C, First Capital Place Illumination Policy. Can I get an introduction from staff?
Through you, Mr. Chair, very happy to be able to bring this policy forward for your consideration. As you'll see noted in the report, this is a necessary step related to the installation of the new City Hall and First Capital Place lighting system. It's something that has been developed in the context of the commemoration strategy and policy formally approved by Council and has been subject to a robust round of conversation both internally and with public stakeholders. The result is the creation of a policy that we wanted to bring to Council for consideration because it does govern how this lighting system will be used. And as the report outlines, we've looked at a number of sample practices across North America in particular, as well as Ireland, to get a sense of what other municipalities have been doing. And then through the public consultation process, we also had the chance to test some different ideas with the public to get a sense of how people would like to see this new asset used, and certainly found divergent opinions, but something that really did come to light as the lighting system was inaugurated over the Canada Day weekend was that once people had a chance to see the lighting system in use, there was certainly a tremendous enthusiasm about maximizing its potential in a way that wasn't quite as apparent when it was first sort of being developed in a more theoretical way. So an earlier version of the policy was much more restrictive, but the policy that's before you now has been purposely developed to be a little bit more open and flexible. And one of the key things that we're really looking to Council to approve as part of this policy is the list of set dates under Section 3.1.3. There's a number of examples from other situations where there is a fixed calendar of times when a lighting system such as this is used, and so taking into account the recommendations of the commemoration strategy and policy, we were also looking for a balanced number of opportunities with which to use the lighting system. So you'll see everything there from Sir John A. Macdonald Day at the beginning of the year through things like International Women's Day, Kingston Pride, St. John Baptiste, International Day of Peace, to try and put together a balanced calendar of opportunities. There was, as you'll see, a bit of a split in terms of this lighting system being used for third-party requests, but based on the input that we received in terms of when people would like to see the lighting system used, we did opt as staff to include that as an opportunity for the community to make those third-party requests. So that is embedded, though people have to fit the criteria as outlined in the policy. The other thing I wanted to flag is we did make a conscious decision to exclude the use of the lighting system in times of sort of spontaneous response to world events. The rationale for that being that there's so many things going on in the world right now, and while it is always desirable to try and recognize and participate in these things that are happening, it would be virtually impossible to do it equitably, and so the decision was made to exclude that. But certainly Council has at any time the opportunity under 3.19 to, in accordance with the Council procedural bylaw, to enact that should they wish to recognize something in particular. So that's a high-level sort of overview of the policy, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Wigginton. Do we have any questions from the committee? Councillor Schell.
Yes, thank you. So the ones, it implies that it's a one-day event, but I'm not sure, say Black History Month. I presume that we're sort of, because we're in the beginning of this, we're going to be flexible and sort of figure out how it works, because something like Black History Month, I presume, could last a week. Or is there a plan to try to keep it to certain lengths of time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the assumption is, and it's written in the policy, that it would be for one night only from dusk till dawn. So when you have an event like Black History Month, hopefully working with the community to figure out if it's all right to do it on the first day of that month, or if there's a significant event during that month when it would be most appropriate.
And further to that, and in between times, it's probably written here and I missed it, but we'll have some lighting on City Hall as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The assumption is that the building will essentially be lit up 365 days of the year, predominantly with, and it's, it's sort of hard to get the right words, but a sort of neutral lighting scheme that shows off the building to its best sort of presentation. One of the things that did come back to us through the testing period in the summer was that people were very keen to see the building highlighted in more creative, innovative ways through the tourist season in particular as a beacon to draw people to the downtown. There was also a lot of enthusiasm for perhaps doing something a little bit more elaborate on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights when it's the weekend and people are wanting to be downtown. So the assumption moving forward as discussion among staff based on what we've heard is that we will likely do more creative lighting schemes in the summertime during tourism season when there aren't other requests coming forward or other things to identify. And then there's also a certain amount of latitude, and we've seen this particularly in Belfast, where through the different seasons, there's ways to modify the lighting scheme so that it's still respectful of the building and the architecture, but can also be engaging in more subtle ways.
Yes, thank you for bringing up Belfast, because those pictures were pretty glorious. Thanks.
Any further questions from the committee? Just, Councillor Stroud, we're actually at the illumination policy. We're at the question stage if you have any. If not, we'll move to public questions. Any questions from the public?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Very impressed with the process that's been undertaken on this, the discussion. I liked everything I saw this summer. And just one little point, following up on what the director said. The dawn to dusk or the dusk to dawn period does vary quite a bit during the year, right? And you have the longer daylight periods in the summer, which is the tourism period, and then in the winter, we're down to maybe 8 hours of daylight. So I'm just wondering, it might be, some people might be feeling possibly slighted by that. They get the longer, say for FebFest or whatever, right? Have you heard any people talking about that? Or maybe you can have it for 2 nights in the summer to allow for longer time to balance it out. I don't know. It's, I'll just say I'm very impressed. And people have been talking about this, and even out of town. I was in Toronto and talking to a friend of mine there. He had been in Kingston and said he was very impressed. So.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Do we have any commentary on that, or could we leave that as a comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, I'll just comment that there has been a lot of discussion about duration and the fact that obviously the length of days and evenings changes throughout the year. So I think that's something that we're going to have to take into consideration as we move through this first year of implementation and come to the review period. At one point, we were actually talking about the lighting system shutting off at midnight or 1 a.m., but felt it was more appropriate to leave it up all night. But again, the light levels can be adjusted as needed. So that's something that we'll have to work with facilities management and construction services to really refine as we move forward and see what people's responses are. Because we also have to be aware as well that there are a significant number of people living in the downtown core in proximity to City Hall, and so we'll also need to get a read on how it impacts residents as well and take that into account. So certainly we'll be looking at that.
Thank you. So the recommendation is that the Administrative Policies Committee recommend to council that the, I'm reading that. The recommendation is that the Administrative Policies Committee recommend to council that the first Capital Place illumination policy, attached report number AP 17023, as Exhibit A, be approved, and that staff be directed to review the policy after 1 full year of operating the new architectural lighting system for Kingston City Hall and the adjoining areas based on feedback received from the public members of Heritage Kingston, community partners, and various city departments as required. Do I have a mover? Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor Schell. Any questions or comments? Councillor Schell.
The lights looked
Osanek,
great
sorry.
on Canada Day weekend. That was fantastic. So many people were taking pictures that night. They just looked awesome.
Councillor Stroud.
I have a comment. I think the policy, a lot of thought has gone into the policy and the balance between, especially the less well-known commemorations that are included, but there is some flexibility worked into the model where others can apply. I'm assuming, but maybe I could just confirm this from the director, that the ones that were included were based on, to a great extent, on the survey responses. Like the survey seems to correlate, the popular items from the survey seem to correlate pretty closely to this list. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. And the original list was also based on what's also recognized at the federal level for National Days of Observance, and that was providing us with the starting point. It was interesting, though, through the survey process that as soon as we suggested things, people responded positively to them being included. So this does really reflect what people wanted, and we try to sort of glean from both the third-party request list as well as the more regular schedule, that kind of balance of things to recognize.
And I guess just as a follow-up, is it possible in the policy, I couldn't really tell from the language, that something might be observed in a less frequent than annual basis, but still perhaps fairly regularly, like every other year or something like that? Is there any flexibility for that kind of thing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, those would be at the request of the community. So the items listed here under 3.1.3 would be done on an annual basis based on council's approval. Other ones that might come forward, as the policy says, would be on a first-come, first-served basis. And certainly we would try to accommodate through the clerk's office as many of the requests as possible as long as they meet the criteria, but it would really be up to the community to initiate that request. And if it's something that they wanted to see happen on an annual basis, then they would have to apply on an annual basis. And if there was any conflict on dates that were being requested, then we may have to look at providing some sort of equitable access if we see that there are potentially competing dates when people want to see things happen.
Thank you. I just have one final question. It should be a short answer. There doesn't seem to be any limit on how many days a year could be illuminated. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. When we first drafted the policy, we proposed limiting it to 4 times a month for a total of about 48 times a year. There are examples of some communities that limit and others that don't, and so we've, as I mentioned at the outset, erred on the side of flexibility, see what kind of response comes forward from the public, and then we'll have to revise based on what we see.
Okay, that's fine. So I was just going to comment that we may have to impose a limit in the future if we're getting feedback from the community that that it seems to be we're illuminating so often that each individual event is losing significance. But that's basically was answered right there. So I'm happy with the policy and I will support it.
Do we have any further question or comments from the committee? Seeing none, I'll call to vote. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Moving on to business item D, amendments to flag display and flying policy. Can I please get an introduction from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this report is to amend the flag display and flying policy to allow requests from the Canadian Force Base Kingston to display the Canadian flag during a retirement ceremony of a member of the Canadian Armed Forces. Earlier this year, we were asked to come back with a report to make this happen. This report will make it happen. I'm going to introduce Janet James, our Deputy City Clerk, who will provide a bit more information, but at the end of the day, it really is housekeeping in nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So as the city clerk has mentioned, the main change is as a result of the February 2017 direction from council to review the policy to incorporate the ability for Canadian Armed Forces members who are retiring with 25 years of service to request to have their flag flown at City Hall. As the policy is currently written, that application would not meet the test of the criteria. So far, to date, there have been 3 requests for retiring members of the Canadian Forces to have their flag flown. And we have managed to accommodate all those requests, but it does require a motion to be prepared and put on a council agenda, to it be brought forward to council. So it does require a little bit of legwork, and this policy will allow for them to be administered by staff, and there are certain timeline criteria that are required to be met, as there are with all flag policy, flag flying requests that are approved through the policy criteria. So it does allow for a little better streamlining of the process and ability to prepare and to work with facilities management and construction services to actually have the flag raised without short notice. I guess the key piece is that CFB Kingston has, in their request to date, we don't expect this to be happening on a regular monthly basis. It may ebb and flow depending on when members are retiring, but it is the criteria of CFB that the member has to be retiring with 25 years of service. So you can imagine that there may not be many people with that length of a service to be retiring, and they do have to be currently stationed at CFB Kingston. And what the flag that they raise is a Canadian flag. It's raised at City Hall. And when the flag is lowered, it's returned to the CFB Kingston, and it is prepared and boxed up in a ceremonial display case that is provided to the retiring member at a later date at their retirement ceremony. In terms of policy language, we reviewed that and we updated that with regards to circumstances when flag raisings would not be considered to ensure that the language was consistent with the commemorations policy that was recently approved by Council. And that was the main housekeeping piece that we had. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. Do we have any questions from the committee? Councillor Stroud.
Sort of further to what you're saying, do we have confirmation of the numbers that may be retiring? I'm just conscious of the demographic. History's largest demographic is at retirement age right now. So it would seem that the numbers would be peaking in the next few years. Do we have any indication from CFB what those numbers might be? Because if not, I don't know if we should be making that assumption.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for that question. We don't have that information. We feel honored as a municipality to have people request that their flag be flown in Kingston. As I said, we don't have that information. I look at it as an honor for us to be able to do that. Thank you.
Yes, well, it is an honor. But if there were, say, 50 retirements coming up, it's a lot harder to change the policy back. So that's why it would be nice to have those numbers. I mean, they must have a list of, I know at the hospital they have a list of years of service, and so you can predict, you can see how many people are over 25 years and who might be close to retirement. But I guess without that information, we'll have to take our best guess. Thank you.
Do we have any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, do we have any questions or comments from the public? Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the report and the explanation. I just have two questions. Following on what Councillor Stroud was bringing forward, the city would give the flag to the base, and then that becomes a gift to the retiring officer. I'm just wondering, what is the cost of the flag? It doesn't seem to be in the report. I didn't see it. And then the other one is, since the city is honoring the retiring forces members, and both my father and both grandfathers served in the forces, so I certainly support this. But I'm wondering if the city has given any thought to honoring its own employees who are retiring after a similar term of service, or if they currently do that. Thank you.
Through Mr. Chair, the flags are not provided by the City of Kingston. The flags are provided from the originating organization, as all flag raisings are done in the City of Kingston. We have not given any thought about raising flags for long-term service members of the city.
Thank you. So the recommendation before us is that the Administrative Policies Committee recommend to Council that the The amended flag display and flying policy attached as Exhibit A to report AP 17-026 be approved. Do I have a mover? Councillor Istroff and seconded by Councillor Schell. Do we have any further comments on this? Seeing none, we'll call to vote. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Moving on to business item E, City of Kingston Video Surveillance Policy Amendment. Do I have an introduction from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, we're pleased to be here this evening to present the amendments to the City of Kingston Video Surveillance Policy. The amendments really primarily with respect to Kingston Transit video surveillance in and around the buses. Mr. Johnson is going to provide some additional information as well on this.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight some of the key amendments to the policy that was originally passed in 2009. So in 2009, the policy statement stated, the City of Kingston may use video surveillance systems in and around city-owned or operated buildings and properties to deter and detect criminal activity. So one of the main changes that we've done is it's not primarily around deterring or detecting criminal activity. So the new policy says it's used to enhance the protection and safety of employees and the general public, reduce, deter, and investigate incidents of vandalism or criminal activity, and protect property and assets. And as the city clerk mentioned, in the original policy was written for buildings and properties, but now we're adding vehicles as well. And so the first vehicles that we are looking at are Kingston Transit buses. Finally, one of the pieces that you see in the report is on an annual basis, the City Clerk's Department was providing an update to the Administrative Policies Committee with respect to the number of times the Kingston Police requested to view video surveillance footage, as well as any changes made to the policy. So as the report speaks, we're planning to discontinue this presentation of the information, and on a go-forward basis, we will update the policy, and the policy is available to the public on the city's website, and so those changes will be available. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Councillor Stroud.
I'm not intimately familiar with them FIPA rules and so on, but can a member of the public have the same access to the same footage, hypothetically, that the police could request in the course of investigation? Like, is that right extended to the citizens as well?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the members of the public can make a formal Freedom of Information request for video surveillance footage, but if the video surveillance footage contains the personal information of another identifiable individual, so that's another member of the public, we cannot disclose that footage to that individual. So in an instance, it could be that that individual is the only person available on the footage. They can be provided with that information.
So, for example, footage of themselves, if they're requesting it, then you could provide it because they're not infringing on the rights of another.
Correct.
But in the case of the police, they can request it in the case of an investigation.
Exactly, and you use the proper terminology there. So the police are given extra powers. They can access personal information, which is on the video surveillance footage, or any other personal information within the city in order to aid in an investigation.
And is the threshold they have to meet, is it what is granted by a judge or a justice, or is it up to you or another city official?
So it could be both. It could be granted by a judge, but it's also, for the police to request that information, it has to be an active investigation. So we don't disclose that information. If a police officer came to City Hall and just requested it, it has to be provided in writing. They have to state that it's to aid in an investigation. Most cases, a badge number or an investigation number are provided.
So not a formal warrant like they would for other kinds of things?
No, we don't require a formal warrant.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Schell.
Thank you. So all transit buses do have video surveillance now, or they're going to have?
Through the chair, all transit buses are going to have a video surveillance.
Actually, that's great. Kingston Access Bus has them, and it has made life a lot easier when there are complaints or, yeah. And it's who said and who did what. So it's very good. Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, I'll ask any questions or comments from the public. Mr. Dixon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the report. The angle I was looking at would be on the overcrowding of Kingston Transit buses. I talked about this before, I think at EITP, and right now there are no capacity limits posted. And I've observed a number of situations as a Kingston Transit pass holder, use the bus once or twice a day or sometimes more. The service is outstanding, don't get me wrong. I'm not being critical or anything like on that, but it's getting better every year. But my concern rises when you have, say, 20 or more standees on a bus with all the seats full as well. And this can happen, say, when Queen's football players are going to practice and they get on at, say, main campus and go to West Campus on number 2 or something like that during rush hour. So these are big people with pads and this sort of thing. Had one a little while ago where it was a outing with young children getting on downtown. A couple of adults with maybe 25 young children during rush hour. And so I'm just wondering if that is going to be possibly documented and addressed, because if you have a situation with that many standees, you're at issue of safety. So thank you.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair. The issue of the number of patrons on the transit bus, it will be documented by the fact that the video surveillance cameras will be recording the information, so it'll be recording the number of people that are on the bus. The video surveillance system will not be used for that purpose specifically, but if there are complaints, if there are reasons that Kingston Transit needs to review some of their service, they can use the video surveillance for that purpose.
Okay, so the recommendation is that the Administrative Policies Committee recommend to Council the approval of the attached amended video surveillance policy as it relates to video surveillance systems used in and around city-owned or operated buildings, properties, and vehicles. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Stroud, seconded by Councillor Osanek. Do we have any further comments on Councillor Stroud?
I was impressed by this item, and the guidelines from Ontario that was in the appendix has a useful quote right under the front cover, and I was just going to read it out for the members of the public. So it says, quote, "If all that has to be done to win legal and social approval for surveillance is to point to a social problem and show that surveillance would help to cope with it, then there is no balancing at all, but only a qualifying procedure for a license to invade privacy." And I just bring that up because that's the balancing act that we had to achieve with this policy. It's an inherent invasion of privacy to record someone with this sort of a 24-hour-a-day camera or surveillance, which is just the eye, the never blinking eye, right? It's an inherent invasion of privacy, but I actually think in the case of transit, it's a great idea, and the other uses that are in the policy that are longstanding make sense as well. I think the technology is there, and the challenge becomes the protection of the individual's right to privacy in the gathering of the information, and that's what this policy is about. And I'm satisfied that it achieves that goal. It does seem to take that quote and the privacy concern to heart in the way that it's constructed, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. Do we have any further comments on the recommendation? Seeing none, we will call to vote. All those in favor? And that passes. We'll move on to business item F, but before we do that, or as we do that, we'll be getting a briefing from Lainey Hurdle and Debbie Miller.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So I guess I'll get started while the screens and the whole system is still warming up. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So we do have a brief presentation for you tonight, and I know you have a tremendous amount of information in your package as far as public engagement is concerned. As you know, it's a council priority, and it's a process that started in 2016, 15. There has been a lot of work done on this particular initiative. It's okay. Okay, thank you. So there has been a lot of work done on this initiative, and I know we presented to council at a special meeting back in April, so I'm not going to go back and cover everything that we covered with council all over again. I know you've already heard it. So I do want to focus more on the steps that we took from April till now. We did have a second and third round of public engagement, so to gain feedback, input on the draft that was presented. Took place between May and August, and what you have in front of you tonight is the draft for your consideration and approval. There has been a lot of changes. There have been a lot of changes, and I know that one of the requests, I believe it was from you, Councillor Osanik, was if we could track the changes, but I have to say that the document changed so much that it would have been probably impossible to follow along. So in terms of what we heard around the second and third round of public engagement consultation, we did continue to hear some comments about negative tone of the document. So some members of the community still felt that we weren't being open enough and really welcoming it as far as the engagement of the public. So we have made significant changes to the draft that you have in front of you based on that feedback and input that we did receive. I should have added that we did specifically reach out to community associations as well throughout our public engagement, where we sent them the documents directly, and we actually informed them that of this meeting tonight and that it was going to be up for approval tonight. We also had a lot of comments about the look and feel of the framework. A lot of people felt it was too long, so the original document was longer, obviously, than what you have now. We did go back, we removed what the public felt was a lot of duplication in the document, so we were able to do that. We also included an executive summary. That was a recommendation of the public as well. They felt that if we had something that was just a few pages, that it would be more practical for most members of the public, and if they wanted to get more details, then they could get into the framework. We did get comments about the fact that we needed to make sure that the city was fully committed to public engagement. So some of the recommendations from the public were that we should have a charter, so a public engagement charter that council would basically approve and endorse, and that involves all participants, which includes members of council, members of the public, and staff as well. So that's included in the package that you have, and it's part of the recommended documentation. We had a lot of comments, and I would say probably more around the second and third round around implementation. So that's where a lot of comments and questions were coming up in terms of how are we going to make sure that the public is aware that public engagement is taking place. How are we going to provide support for single parents that may want to attend meetings with their children? What are we going to do? So a lot of that actually will be covered by Debbie Miller as she gets through the implementation piece. You also have the implementation plan as part of your documentation. That was also circulated to all community associations as well for input. We received a lot of comments and question about why planning and heritage applications were not included as part of this framework. So for the two members of council that sit on the Heritage Committee, they're very familiar with the fact that when we receive an application for heritage, we only have 90 days to process the application and get a council approval. That includes from the time we receive the application, it's deemed to be complete, staff review it, write a report, go to Heritage Committee, which meets once a month, and then it makes it to council, whichever following meeting that might be. So to extend that time frame would probably mean that the council wouldn't get to approve many heritage applications, because if we don't meet the 90 days, the application is deemed to be approved automatically. And that's not something that is fair to council. So we did explain that to the public. As you know, planning also has a certain time frame related to planning applications and decision making. And members of for those of you who are also members of the Planning Committee, you're also aware that there are some changes that are coming in terms of public participation in the planning process. And that will be coming to council the same meeting as this framework will be for council consideration. So that will give you the bigger picture as far as not only what is a public engagement framework going to cover, but what else are we doing specific to planning to really improve our engagement. Removing barriers was a significant also area of concern. Many people talked about making sure that we had accessible locations, making sure that we reached out to groups that typically would not get engaged. Those types of things were identified. I know that the presentation or the portion of the presentation on the implementation plan will touch on a number of initiatives to remove barriers as well. And council support was actually brought up on April 25th by some members of council that wish to have more logistical support to help plan and organize some of their public engagement activities within their districts. So that's something that is going to be provided through the clerk's office, and it's identified in the report as well. So I wanted to do a bit of a slide that where I wanted to make sure we were able to provide you with some clear messages around public engagement, because I think the framework has gone through significant input, and I think that when we look at other communities, it is a very strong framework. But it doesn't mean that we're going to now start to do public engagement because we've never done it. I want to make sure that we're clear that the city has been doing public engagement in different ways. What the framework is going to do is bring more consistency in terms of how we approach it. I could give you multiple examples of how public engagement has been done in the past year. North Kingston, the official plan, and we didn't have a framework, but we still went ahead and engaged the public. The public engagement framework and its recommendation will most likely result in taking more time and more money for a number of initiatives. There's no doubt about that. You probably have seen in the report that part of the recommendations are to include funding for the support of a facilitator, for example, for various situations where public engagement may not have been planned as part of a project. It also doesn't mean that everybody will be supportive of the outcome. So that's, I think, a very key piece, because there is a feeling or a sense that if staff did public engagement properly, then everybody would be supportive and pleased with the outcome. And that's not what public engagement means. It really means that people had the opportunity to be part of the process, they were heard, they were considered, and they were informed of the outcome and the results. It's also about opening up the dialogue between members of the public, members of council, and staff, and to make sure that we're looking at that in a more collaborative way. It's about removing some barriers, and I know that Debbie will touch on that a little bit more. And I also want to make sure that it's clear that this is the framework that you have in front of you, and it will need to be reviewed at some point in time. We understand that we're going to roll it out, and there are going to be things that are going to work well and things that don't work so well. And we will hear that, and we will get that feedback from the public and the community. So we expect that within the next year or two, we'll be back with some proposed changes and amendments to reflect that. So with that, I'll pass it along to Debbie, and we can take questions after.
Thank you. So the implementation plan was definitely a piece that the public provided a lot of input, and there was a lot of questions surrounding the implementation plan. So as a starting point, we put together some identifiable objectives and priorities for the implementation plan. They include collaboration and outreach, training and awareness, communications, status report and evaluation, and then the overall evaluation. So I'm just going to walk through these with you just for awareness. So the collaboration and outreach, there's some pieces that we've identified. Again, removing the barriers within some of the areas that have been identified. So one of them, community engagement network. So we've definitely been working with the community organizations throughout the process, through focus groups, through email, conversations, direct meetings, sharing feedback back and forth by email. But establishing a network where other organizations or community members, individuals, groups could sign up online, and we could provide them information, whether it's by email, it could be posters that they could share with their groups and organizations, again, to distribute more information about public engagement so that we're getting the message broader, so that more people are learning about it. Some of the organizations that we've worked with through this process have groups of 300 members that we don't have all of their contact information, but they have that information. So it's, again, trying to get out to that network and working with them closely. An internal engagement group. So again, working with staff internally, working collaboratively, meeting regularly to talk about issues that have come up, lessons learned, ideas, challenges, and trying to really come together and have some conversations, trying to be connected where can we work together and potentially piggyback on some of the sessions that are happening so that, you know, we're eliminating some of the duplication of having multiple sessions as well. It's also an opportunity to bring some ideas together and say this worked really well, or this time of day isn't working so well. So another opportunity to continue to improve what we're hearing from the public, what we're hearing from city staff, and what we're hearing from council too. The activity bags was definitely one of the pieces that we've identified to try and remove barriers so that parents with young children can bring them to sessions. We would have the bags available at the sessions. They can grab the bags. They don't need to return them. They can take them home with them at the end of the session, but they can work quietly on an activity bag that would include various activities, colorings, and things like that within that. So that was definitely a piece that we're trying to work with parents and families to accommodate bringing kids to activity sessions. I know some of the sessions I've been involved with some of the different groups, the Bell Park group, there was kids that came to that session and they participated in the session. So it's really exciting to see that happen as well. So the training is another piece, so training and awareness. So we've identified different training for city employees, being the IAP2, being the International Association for Public Participation, the planning and techniques training. So that's definitely one that we want to roll out to staff that are very involved with the planning of public engagement. Council and senior leaders, so again, the IAP2, so International Association for Public Participation for Decision Makers, working with the Clerk's Department to establish and finalize a date for that for council, looking at November date, but that will follow later with the clerks.
We can confirm that date. It's going to be November the 15th, starting at 5:30 here at City Hall.
Perfect. Thank you. And then the other piece that was identified too by residents during our sessions was they were interested in being trained on an awareness of IAP2, but also on an awareness of the public engagement piece and then the online platform as well. So there was lots of interest there. So again, we'd be working with the residents to establish that training and the awareness, and then how often we would roll that out would depend on the interest coming from the public again. The awareness piece for staff, it would definitely, once the framework is approved, I will spend lots of time going out to departments to make them aware of the framework, to make them aware of the resources that are available to staff as well, and then the online platform as well, walking through those pieces, making sure that staff are supported through the implementation process, just so that we make sure we've got that consistency out there across the city. It's going to take time. It's going to take time to get to that point where we're all being consistent, but we're definitely excited to get there and looking forward to that piece. Facilitation is definitely another piece that we've identified. We're looking to do an RFI, which would identify facilitators, so we would have a list of facilitators to draw from. There's definitely times where there's unplanned or unanticipated projects that come up where it hasn't been accounted for facilitation as well. So as Lanny had mentioned from the earlier portion, we would just need to budget for an account that would allow for that facilitation piece to take place where it hadn't been allocated in advance. Sorry. Communications. So communications is definitely a really critical piece with public engagement. So we have put together a communication strategy, and it was included with the implementation plan. So it speaks high level to what we would do, but there would obviously be a lot more detail included in the communications plans that would be rolled out. So we would look to do one for the online platform and one for public engagement that would be ongoing. There would be different messaging, different times. We would use different mediums as well. The online public engagement platform is a really exciting piece that we are looking to launch in October. More details, I will send out an email and talk to everybody again about. I would be happy to sit down with you and walk you through the platform as well, for awareness. It's going to link directly from the main page of the City of Kingston website, from the Get Involved button, so you'll go in there. The calendar will still reside at the bottom of that page, and then you can click into the platform at the top. We're doing it as a pilot project for 18 months just to make sure that everybody is comfortable with the platform and it's doing what we want it to do as well. There's going to be, people can sign up, they can provide input, you can bring ideas forward, you can view other people's comments. There's going to be different tools that will be used. There's a survey, there's a poll, there's an ideation tool. You can bring stories or photos forward. Depending on the project that you're working on, we will assess and determine what are the best tools to be using, and we'll definitely work with the subject matter experts to bring those forward. Again, a great way to share ideas. We can also share emails out when there's project updates on specific projects. So that will be an exciting piece. There's going to be a lot of promotion around that, getting residents to sign up for the platform and be able to provide input on that. We will also be using tablets at different public sessions so that we can receive input on a tablet electronically so that people can provide input at sessions directly into the platform, or also do evaluations using the tablets as well. I will be providing semi-annual information report, status report on the effectiveness of public engagement sessions, provided that to council. So I think that's a really critical piece so that you know where we're at, how many sessions we're holding, number of people that are attending, and if there's changes or things that we need to adapt through there. So just staying in touch. The evaluation, again, at the end of projects or phases of projects, there will be evaluations both for city employees to talk about how things went, how well things went, and also for residents to evaluate the process that they went through as well. So those are both critical pieces, again, that we've heard from residents. And again, working with them, hearing the good, the bad, and the ugly allows us to improve and make things better. So it's really definitely a big piece. And then the overall evaluation, identified in 2019, doing an overall evaluation, reviewing the worksheets, the platform, the resources, the materials, additional areas that are identified. I'm not suggesting we would wait until 2019 and do the complete evaluation. We'll continue to evaluate throughout the process, but that's when we would come forward with some recommendations on some changes in that. So there's lots going on. I'm sure we'll identify some new areas as well as we go through the process and work with staff closely and residents and council. But I'm really excited about the implementation plan and the framework, and Lanny's put a lot of hard work into the framework, and so thank you.
Do we have any questions from the committee? Councillor Shell. I had to wait for a second. I was like, someone's got to ask something here.
Budget. Just reading all of this and realizing how much time and effort, and actually it does even talk about the fact that for a lot of projects, and usually it's going to be a big project, I think, we're going to have to budget to do this. You're going to need probably extra staff. You've talked about the facilitator. How do you work out a budget for this sort of thing? I mean, part of me saying you use what other municipalities do, but this is going to be a tough one, isn't it? And finding time for staff and councillors to get involved with what is now becoming an extra, although we requested it, so.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So on the budget component, as we indicated earlier, when we have major projects, so whether it's the official plan or something else that's being budgeted for, we would include funds within that budget to account for public engagement, and that would typically be through, obviously, a team that we would hire. So, for example, the North Kingston would be a perfect example of that. When we have situations where we have to do public engagement and it wasn't necessarily planned, and I'm going to use one we had last year, the interim control bylaw. So this came up, and it's not that we had, planned for this and included in the budget, and we knew that it was going to be quite a controversial meeting, and it was probably best to have somebody who was neutral to help facilitate that, and that's where we brought in the services of a facilitator, which I think was very worthwhile and positive. But you are correct, that's where in the 2018-19 budget we're going to have to see some funds being allocated for that type of support service. There are a number of things that I believe are already included in our existing budget, such as the engagement platform for that pilot period of time that's already covered in the existing budget. So there are things that are covered, and there are things we understand are going to be above and beyond. There's no doubt that I think it will require more staff time, especially probably from a communications perspective, when we look at the effort that will have to go into the communication plan as well as the evaluation after the engagement activity. So that will be additional work from a staff perspective in terms of I'm going to say content expert. I think a lot of them are already doing, even though we have a framework coming into place, I think a lot of them are already doing significant public engagement, but it is very time consuming. There's no question about that.
And on top of that becomes, I think, one of the biggest things that we're going to learn is about managing expectations. Because the more we are inviting the public to become involved, we're also saying we might not be able to accommodate you without winding up with people saying, well, I knew you weren't going to listen anyway. So I think that seems to be a big piece of all of this. Would you agree?
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. And that's why I wanted to put it somewhere on the slide that public engagement doesn't mean everybody will be supportive of the initiative at the end of the process. And I think part of it, in terms of trying to manage expectation, will be to be able to respond to all the comments in a similar way that we've been doing for this project and for some of the other projects as well. It is very time consuming, and I can speak from experience, and definitely time consuming for councillors to go through the series of comment, but definitely the public feels that it's worthwhile and they can see their comments and know how they have been considered.
Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. So business item F, public engagement framework. Do we have any further questions or comments from the committee related to that? I'm guessing no. We'll move on to members of the public. Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to staff for the briefing. Very informative. I've been following this file pretty closely. I think that the efforts of the Coalition of Kingston Communities have been really significant here. This topic's been discussed at their meetings on several occasions, and they've also been active in the media and in presentations to council and committees on flaws that they and people who were on in the meetings have seen with respect to the engagement strategy. And as this project has been going on, I've noticed a definite improvement in the city's approach on this, and higher quality work, more detail being paid attention to, more care being put in. So I want to thank staff for that. And I think this report is also, it's more streamlined and more compact and just better than the earlier draft that we had. So I wanted to make sure that gets recognized, saluted. Okay, so I'm going to start off. As my first question has to do with the phrase that was used during the briefing, which is major project. Okay? I'm not sure if the major project has ever been defined in terms of what that means, whether it's in terms of complexity, if it's a physical area of the facility or, say, a park that's being looked at, or the cost or whatever. So I think we need to look at that a bit more. I'm going to get into the file for which I started coming down here about 5 years ago, which is Bell Park. And that's coming to a vote on Tuesday with a report on that. So a lot of the points I've been raising on Bell Park are reflected in the changes that this report has brought. So I'm happy about that, and I know that other people on other files are happy as well, because their complaints are being recognized for what they are. So I guess my first point has to do with, in terms of access to data. And I know that during the open government discussion, back when this was being talked about for priorities of council, that there was an idea of putting historical data for the city of Kingston online, right? You've got current meetings and agendas and minutes and that sort of thing online for a certain number of years. But you've also got a lot of historical records that are not available to the public. You can't go to the library and get it, or like you can't get it online. So I'm wondering about the status of that project. Now, I wanted to talk about the order of how the steps get done. And this is tied in with the major project. I consider Bell Park a major project because it's 100 acres, right? That's a large piece of land. And what staff did on the file was they brought recommendations to council before doing public consultation in 2012. They started public consultation January 2013, after almost a year of working on the file. So it wasted a lot of time and money. I've been seeking data on Bell Park Fairways, as some people know, for 5 years, and I can't get it. So I'm concerned about that. It would have impacted the debate in a very major way. And my final point is that I had a sitting city councilor send an email to me which said that he was directing staff to not answer my questions, and that was being discussed actively with staff. I got the email on file. I'm not making this up, and I've raised it before at committees. So that kind of thing is not how I want my city run. Okay? It's bigger than me, and it's bigger than the file that I've been working on. And if you look at what the Act says about that, that might be getting close to a violation of the Act. I don't know for sure. I've not taken it to a formal tribunal. But what I did do was I visited the Office of the Ombudsman of Ontario earlier this year and discussed the data accessibility. They said they get requests from around the province like that on a daily basis. And what they normally do is they get in touch with the city employee and they direct them to supply the information. So I've not gone that route yet. I could go there, but I'm hoping we can get that data out to talk about it without having to go there. Because we've had the review for 5 years, and the data I'm seeking covers a period of time when that facility did well. You would think the city employees would want to bring that data forward so they could show that the facility was doing well at one time. I know now it's struggling, right? But there was a bias implicit in the way that that was done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Do we have any further comments related to what a significant project is, and also the comments related to access to data?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of major project, I think that I may have used the wrong term. I should have utilized planned project, and really that's what I meant to say. Those are the ones that are typically included in our budget. And that was the message that I was trying to get across. As far as documentation, I can tell you that if something is not available online, any member of the public can put in a request through the clerk's office, an MFIPA request to access documents that may be archived. And if the documents are available and can be released, the clerk's office would do that. And I know, unfortunately, the clerk had to leave, but I'm sure that he could have commented on that further.
Thank you. Okay. So the recommendation is that Council endorse the City of Kingston Public Engagement Charter and the City of Kingston Public Engagement Framework included as Exhibit A and B of the report, number AP 17031 respectively, and that Council directs staff to include baseline funding amounts in the operational budget to cover the cost of facilitation and logistical elements of public engagement for projects or initiatives that are unplanned or unanticipated, and further that budgets for all future planned projects and initiatives include appropriate funding for public engagement activities. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Stanek, second by Councillor Stroud. Any further comment on this? Councillor Stroud.
I'd like to personally thank staff for the obvious hours and hours and hours of work gone into this. I can't think, I was just commenting to Councillor Schell, I can't think of a larger topic to have to try to tackle. You could say public engagement strategies to encourage public engagement. That is actually something that everyone in almost any job has to be aware of. For example, as a nurse, if I go into my room, to my patient's room, and I don't find a way to get the patient to talk to me, I'm not going to get very far. That's, engaging with one individual. When you're engaging an entire city on matters that affect us all, it's like you've got to have those conversations with every single citizen. And that's the fundamental basis of democracy. That's what it means to have a democracy, is when you have government which represents the will of the people. That's the definition. So you can never do too much work on this, and we'll also probably never finish it. So I understand this is the first step. We need to get it in, get it started. It's like a living document that will get updated as we go. That's already been spoken to by the Commissioner. Well, I think what staff needs to hear from us in the committee here today is not only do we need to approve this, but we need to really make our support very clear that this is huge, and this is maybe it's a little bit like the unicorn. You can never quite catch it, but it's something to strive for, and it makes our jobs legitimate when we as councillors have this reality, and there's not a single one of us here that could expect to get reelected or elected in the first place if people didn't think we were going to listen to them. So it's a reality that we live directly in our jobs, but I think for the city to achieve, in the current climate, to achieve any semblance of something legitimate that the public will accept, and many of the comments in this package are of that nature, that's a major achievement and something to build on. And if one day we can say to ourselves, the city believes in what we do, and they trust us, and they trust that we listen to them, then we've got a democracy. So we're not there yet, but thank you for this great first step, and I wholeheartedly support it.
Councillor Sra.
I would just echo those words, Peter. Thank you for saying that. I'm very impressed with that work. I didn't even know this was being done, so I'm still a newbie here, but very well done. And just for clarity, because I don't know it all, you're saying any project that goes through planning is open to a planning review like this? Is there a certain size or not?
Commissioner Hurdle.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of, and I'm not sure if you're asking the question about the planning, kind of the planning department world, but I'm going to try to maybe answer your question in two different ways. So if your question is in regards to planning applications, so the applications themselves go through the committee, and there's a very specific process that needs to respect provincial legislation. Having said that, there are also a number of projects within the planning realm, like the North Kingston Vision Exercise, the official plan, that do not have to follow those same timelines as formal applications, and those would fall under the public engagement framework.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Councillor Schell.
Thank you. Yes, a huge amount of work has gone into this. Oh, I just thought of another one. I think it's only the last year, we've had the official plan, which involved incredible numbers of meetings and reaching out to people, and I think eventually people felt pretty satisfied. The third crossing, that was an incredible amount of reaching out personally. And then the shockers, 671 Brock Street, turned into an incredibly contentious reaching out that actually has finally settled into something that we can all live with. Well, most of us can. Interim control bylaw was the other that was contentious, but it moved through. Nobody was seriously damaged, because sometimes it feels that way. And then the pen visioning, penitentiary, Portsmouth Harbor. So we've done a lot of big things in a year. I mean, it's really incredible and been very well done. I mean, I've got to congratulate staff for the reaction time being very swift, and sort of we have trouble, we're going to handle it as quickly as possible, or we're going to do something as quickly as possible to see if we can diffuse the issue and get everyone listening to each other. So it is very big, and we've already, you're right, we've been at it hard. I'm hoping things calm down. Kedco? Oh my God, Kedco. And that wasn't even really ours in many ways. But yes, we've been through a lot. And I read about Toronto and other cities, and you know, they have the same difficulties, but in our small city, we've dealt with a lot in the last while, and I'm really glad we have the framework, but really, we've been doing a lot of this for the last year. Now it's more formalized, and I think there's less chance people will feel left out with it having a great platform like this. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to vote for it.
I still remember, you reminded me of the KEDCO Review Committee. I still felt some bruises on me as you mentioned that. Do we have any further comments from the committee? Mr. Hunt, did you have a comment you'd like to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, and I appreciate the comments that council have made. This was a significant undertaking. We do believe that we have practiced over the years transparency and public engagement. We understand that we can always do better, and I think when we started into this, that was a commitment that I made and that senior staff made. And I want to recognize the work that staff have done, and I also want to recognize the contributions that the public have made to the input to be able to create this document. As Ms. Hurdle said earlier, you do get a lot of feedback from a lot of different areas. Some feedback is, within the context that you're trying to engage people, and some feedback is totally outside that particular context. But you have to be respectful and deal with the information that you receive in the feedback loop. You have all of your senior staff members here tonight. The reason all of those people are in this room is because we want to demonstrate that we're making a commitment to continue to make public engagement of highest priority so that we can build trust, maintain and deliver integrity, and advance this particular community. So as the Chief Administrative Officer, I'm really pleased to see those folks in this room tonight, and I want to thank the staff that led this, and I want to support the staff that are going to be implementing it, because it is going to be a holistic effort by those that lead projects, those that lead change, those that lead program advice and/or education, and the support requirements that it will take both from the communications department and from the clerk's department. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak.
And thank you for your comments. So now we'll vote on the recommendation. All of those in favor? And that passes. Moving on to business item G, Rideau Crest Home Board of Management. We'll need a mover and seconder to resolve into the Board of Management of Rideau Crest Home. Moved by Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor Schell. And we'll vote to resolve into the Board of Management. All those in favor? And that passes. If we could have an introduction.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Highlights from this report are as follows. The following report is for June 2017 through to the end of July. The home has maintained an occupancy rate of 99.25% throughout this time period. The home had 4 incidents reportable to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care throughout those 2 months. The Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care did visit the home in July for 3 days to complete an inspection on 2 critical incidents. Upon completion of this inspection, there was no non-compliance issued. The home has completed our annual Work-Life Pulse survey for 2017, which assesses employees' overall job satisfaction. The leadership team has taken the results from this survey and created an action plan to address staff satisfaction and focus on employee engagement. This action plan has been provided to you in a supplementary report tonight. As of the end of July, the home has maintained being $12,458 underspent in its operating budget. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the committee? Councillor Osanek.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask 2 questions about financials. And I see that some areas are overspent, but some areas are underspent. And the 2 that are underspent, dietary and life enrichment, like to me, food is really important, and life enrichment, contributes to the mental health or well-being of the residents. So I'm just wondering what's made dietary, almost $100,000 underspent. Are we not doing any steak and everybody's having beans and sausage and pasta? Like, that's my concern. Like, is everybody margarine and we're not providing any butter? Like, it just seems that where we're overspent, how we're making up where we're overspent is by, making the food less tasty, maybe. And for life enrichment, $73,000 underspent. Is that a difference of somebody's salary? Like there's a vacancy there that we haven't filled, or what? How are we 73,000 underspent for life enrichment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the big variances in dietary and life enrichment are both wages. So we had some significant vacancies in the dietary department and life enrichment, including a supervisor in life enrichment for a majority of the year. So those positions have now been filled, so we'll see that balance out. But a large majority of dietary underspend and life enrichment actually, as well as like environmental services, because we often see them creep a little bit over budget by this time of year. So dietary, as far as raw food supplies, I believe at this point in the year, they're marginally underspent by about $8,000, if I recall correctly, but he's running a really tight budget on that as far as food. It's wages.
Mr. Chair, I just want to add that I think there were a number of concerns expressed around the food specifically. We haven't changed our practice in terms of the food, and we do work with residents in terms of their food preferences as well. So I just want to make sure that's clear, that it's not that there have been reductions there.
Do we have any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, this report is, oh, sorry. Mr. Dixon, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, just very briefly, I want to commend the employees and staff who works with them for this. I know the Reader Crest is doing very well. And just going by recently, I noticed that they're now flying a flag which states that they've been highly accredited. So you can see that as you go by. So looks great. Nice to see the recognition, and people will see that and they'll know it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Now this report is for information purposes only. I'll need a mover to rise from the Board of Management of Rideau Crest Home. Moved by Councillor Sanik, seconded by Councillor Schell. All those in favor? That passes. We have no new motions, no notices of motion. Is there any other business? Seeing none, we have no correspondence. The date and time of our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 9th, 2017, and I'll get a motion to adjourn. Brought by Councillor Schell and seconded by Councillor Sanik. All those in favor? We're adjourned.